just don't because the silence is awkward. Yeah. Okay. Guys, we are continuing on in our series of Revelations, Dragon's Fire, and other mysterious things. We have been talking about and trying to wrap our heads around kind of things that the things that Revelation is trying to tell us. Because Revelation is this crazy book. We recognize that. We honor that. We look at how it's just filled with all of these like crazy images and characters and just all these different things. And it's just really kind of hard to understand what this book is talking about. I mean, we could try to guess. There are people who have spent their whole lives studying Revelation and trying to say, like, this is what Revelation is trying to talk about. This is what you need to look out for. This is what's to come. This is what has already happened. And all these different things. And so when you jump into Revelation and look at all these different characters that are part of it, all these weird things that happen, it's kind of hard to like kind of be like, okay, God, what are you trying to do? But we've been looking at Revelation and really trying to just kind of get a baseline of an understanding of what it's really trying to tell us, so that you can go and read it on your own. Again, I will say this every week, and I mean, it should be true for everything that we talk about. Go home and read this on your own. If you have not tried to read Revelation yet, this is the time to try it in light of everything that we're talking about. And ask those questions, engage with it, and try to understand what it is trying to teach us. But we've been looking at, again, as a baseline, as a foundation, of like what Revelation is. It's a very descriptive reminder for all the people of the church to examine their reality now in order to better focus on the big picture of the future. So again, we got to examine what our reality is right now. Really understand what are the things that you're fighting, what are the enemies trying to like fight for you, against you, around you, whatever. Like, what are the influences coming into your lives right now? Like, what is your reality? What is your relationship? What is your understanding of God? And then take that reality and like go from there and look at the big picture of what God is doing. Look at the big picture of what is happening around you, so that you know what to expect from God, whether in the future, meaning like 5 minutes from now or years from now, in the afterlife, in the current life, whenever. When we look at our reality right now and compare that to the big picture of what God is doing, we have a better understanding of what He's doing, of what He wants for us and what is to come. And so when we look at Revelation, we look at all these different characters and all these different symbols, we say it's like better to just kind of understand it as this movie that's trying to paint this picture, this very detailed, descriptive, crazy movie that is trying to explain what God is doing. And so we've been looking at it. We looked, we kind of did this up, and last week we looked at the characters of Revelation. And we're going to kind of go back to some of these characters here today. But again, when we look at the characters of Revelation, we are looking at the big picture of what is happening, and it requires us to honestly understand who is involved, what they are capable of, and how that motivates us to join their side. Again, we kind of have this picture of like, we often jump to when we talk about Satan, that picture of like a guy in red tights and horns and a pitchfork, or the angel in a robe with a harp. But what Revelation is telling us is like, Satan's not this guy in red tights and a pitchfork. He is like a dragon, and he is vicious, and he is angry, and he is powerful. And it's not just God and the angels are these harps, robe-wearing harp people, but that they are like this magical, mystical, like powerful, authoritative like beings that are fighting against this dragon. And when we understand like really how that's describing what Satan is capable of, it motivates us to join a side and like to participate, to be involved, to say, okay, I want to be on the side of the dragon, or I want to be on the side of authority and of the woman and of the church, because we know what they are capable of, and we want to choose that side. And so, like, thinking ahead as we continue like with this movie analogy, let's talk about romance movies. Yeah? Favorite romantic comedy. Anybody? What's your favorite? If I were to go home right now and take your movie recommendation, what movie, romantic comedy, would you say that I should watch? Any suggestions? What? Spider-Man? Yes. Absolutely every time. No? Do y'all not even watch romantic comedies? I just watched one, The Proposal. I just watched that one. That one was adorable. I think my favorite of all time, The Notebook, literally makes me cry. Massive. Dirty. I just watched that for the first time the other day. And I was just jealous the whole time because I cannot dance at all. And then I watched that, I was like, Jen, let's do the Dirty Dancing hold. And she was like, no, Chris. So then I did it to Asher, and that did not go well. Anybody else? No? Any other favorite romantic comedies? Addison, what's yours? No? Okay, well, guys. Really hoping for some good. Cameron. Coming to America. Okay. An old classic. I have not seen that one in years, so I barely remember that one. But okay, way to pull out the old movies. Cassandra. She's the Man. Is that the soccer one? And Channing Tatum and is it said that I know Channing Tatum was in that movie before I remember? Anyways. So here's romantic comedies, they're fun. They could be funny, but usually, I have to space them out because they're practically all the same, right? There's some situation and the guy and girl, they're together and they're flirting, or there could be some tension of oh no, I don't like you, I could never be with someone like you, and they're oh, you're the scum, and whatever. And then as they spend more and more time together, they actually see the good side of the other person, and they're oh, I think I'm falling in love with you. And then there's some kind of misunderstanding, some kind of conflict. It could be the ex-boyfriend comes into the picture and tries to take the girl away and whatever, or the parents come in and be you will never be good enough to love my daughter, and you're just you feel and you're crying, and then they go away, they leave them at the altar, whatever, and there's some kind of big conflict and misunderstanding that tears the relationship apart, and then that ending usually kind of in rain, or they ran through the park, ran through the airport or whatever, and they're all sweaty and they're I do love you. Oh, you need a shower. Type of situation, right? They always kind of come back. But what I love about romantic comedies is that they are actually full of, and I guess you could say this of any movie, but especially with the misunderstanding and the tearing the relationship apart, they are full of this conflict of will they end up together? I don't know. Well, oh man, there's the evil stepmother coming in to ruin the relationship, and they tear this people apart. And when we think about Revelation as a movie, it's kind of weird to describe it as this romantic comedy, but it is this romantic comedy of conflict, of this relationship trying to get in the way, of people trying to get in the way of the relationship that you have with God. And so we see Revelation as a book of conflict. And once we know the characters of Revelation, we see that they are involved in this conflict that is designed to test our faith, test our connection with God, test our understanding of Him, test our commitment, and all these things that we'll jump into. But we looked at the characters last week, and we know what they are capable of. We know who they are. We know about the dragons and the beasts and the women, and we talked about broadly what they represent. And so we take these characters and what they represent, we put them into this middle of the conflict that's about you. That's designed to test who you are. Test what you are committed to. Test what you know. And test your relationship with God. And so we look at the first one. We talked about a lot of these last week. But in Revelation, one of the big ones, and there's a lot of different conflicts throughout, but one of the big ones that's a big theme are the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets. Okay? And the 7 seals, and it's all about this vision of opening seals, not the animal seals, because that would be very disgusting. Never mind. I have this picture. No, okay, stop. But seals, in the letter. So, they had the letter, they broke the seal of the letter and, opened it and read, kind of this letter. And we see these different things of what they represent. We talked about the different horses, we talked about the martyrs. And in this one, it's really, I can't, just sum it up in this one line. Or, I can, but it really talks about, earthquakes and darkness and mountains catching on fire and falling into the ocean and, all these things about how the world is kind of just being torn apart. And just to get an image of what is being talked about, we look at Revelation chapter 6, verse 1. And it says, I watched as the Lamb, talking about Jesus, opened the first of the 7 seals. Then I heard one of the 4 living creatures say a voice like thunder, come. And I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown. He rode out as a conqueror, bent on conquest. Just the language of that passage. He opened up this letter, and then this horse came out of nowhere that was bent on conquest. Bent on conquering people, conquering the nations, conquering governments. This horse out of nowhere, this white horse just comes out bent on victory. And just that image there. And then we also jump to chapter 15, or verse 15, where it kind of describes that the kings of the earth, and the princes, the generals, the rich, the mighty, and every slave, and every free man hid in caves and among the rocks of the mountains. They called to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand? And so we see this tension of like people wanting to hide from what's going on, wanting to pull themselves away from like this destruction and this conquest and death and famine and all these things, wanting to just like pull themselves back. And when we kind of look at the different things that happen through the trumpets and the seals, what we see here, like the first big conflict that we see, is that through the opening of these things, you see that the world engages in the conflict of relationship, testing the commitment, testing of how committed we are to God's promises. It tests your relationship with God, and by that's a big term. Like it tests how much you know about God. It tests how much you engage with God. It tests how much you like try to get to follow God, how much you pursue God, how much you like show people that you're in a relationship with God. I mean, if you think about all the things that are involved with the relationship, that's what these seven seals and these trumpets try to like break apart. That they come in and be like, hey, you know what? Let's send a mighty earthquake to the earth and let's see how much you trust in God today. Let's send like people who are about conquest and victory and famine and death into your lives, and let's see how committed you are to God. Let's see how much you love people when this happens. Let's see how deeply of a relationship you have with God when you are pushed to your limit. It really just tests your relationship. And we see here where it talks about like kings and generals and everybody, they hide when these things happen. And it is easy for us as people, when we are pushed to our limit, to back away from the people that we are supposed to like love and trust in. And so when these things come into your lives, when these things come in and try to stretch and pull you away from God, how is your relationship with Him tested? How much do you know about Him? How committed are you to Him? How much are your habits like formed around your desire to know Him and love Him and show His love? That's what these like first tests come to show. What is your relationship with God? Because these obstacles, these struggles are going to come in and try to say like, no, I don't think you're really committed to Him. I don't think you really have a relationship with Him, and I'm going to prove it. Let's send some destruction to your life and see what happens. And then we get to the second conflict, or the second one. We talked about these a lot, so I'm not really going to spend a lot of time, but we see with the dragon and the woman and the beast, we see that the dragon, who represents Satan, the passage tells us that, is doing everything he can to destroy the woman. If you remember last week, kind of represents the church and Christians and followers of Jesus, and even going as far as making new beasts to recruit an army of followers from the world. And we jump here in verse 12, it kind of describes this in 7 and 9. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, and the ancient serpent, called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray, he was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. And then jumping to verse 15, when the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the desert, where she would be taken for some time. And so we see this dragon trying to pursue the woman, trying to destroy the woman, trying to destroy the church, trying to destroy Christianity, trying to destroy the relationship that the Christians have with God, their place, that pursuit. And we see with the second conflict that this drama played out shows the conflict of allegiance and love, testing how committed the church is to God and His leadership. Like, it's not just like testing your relationship. It's not just saying like, okay, do you really know God? Do you really trust in Him? But now it's testing your allegiance. Because, yeah, mistakes happen in relationships. You might say the wrong thing and like hurt your friend's feelings. Your friend might misunderstand you, like do something to like that hurts you. But now this is the allegiance. This is the equivalent of like someone in your friend group starting to spread rumors about another one of your friends, and you choosing to believe the friend is spreading gossip, or choosing to believe in your friend that you know and care about. This is about allegiance to God. Not just saying like, okay, God, I messed up, I'm still on your side. This is actually saying, God, I either love you or I hate you. I'm either going to be with the dragon and fight against you, or I'm going to be on the side of the woman and stand up for you. And we see as it plays out with the dragon, the woman, like the beast and everything, it gathers followers. It gathers people to fight on them, to say, I hate God, and I will do everything I can to bring God down. That is what the dragon and the beast are trying to do. And so now the dragon and the beast are coming into your life and saying, what side are you going to choose? Ultimately, you have to pick a side. Which side is it going to be? What is your allegiance? It's not just like, what is your relationship? It's like, really, when it comes down to it, are you on God's side or on the dragon's side? Because you have to choose. And so when we look at this, looking ahead, we look at the conflict of the big picture, and it helps us to see that we are being asked to choose a side, and then testing to see how committed we are to that side. Like, it's not just saying, like, do you go to church? It's like, are you committed to church and to Jesus? It's not, are you, like, okay just watching what Jesus is doing, or are you involved with what Jesus is doing? You must choose a side, and how committed are you to that side? Like, how involved, how active, how formed are you onto that side? And so we ask you these questions as you continue to look ahead. That when you think about your relationship with God, your willingness to stay by His side, how committed are you? And that's an important question, because a lot of times, like, we will come to church and say, yes, I am committed to God. But then friends spread rumors about you, and you ultimately respond in a way that God does not want you to respond. Instead of about love, you contribute hate. You continue to push people away. You don't involve yourself with what God is doing. Or how seriously do you take the spiritual conflict that's happening around you and for you? Like, do you take seriously when I say there is a battle happening around you? Do you take that seriously? Do you recognize that and recognize the consequences of what come from that? And when you think about the big conflict that is happening, how do you expect it will end? If you are going to agree that a conflict is happening, how do you think it will end? Will the dragon win? Do you expect that to happen? Or do you expect God to win? And then, so what side of the conflict do you want to be on when it does end? We'll kind of talk about that a little bit more next week as we wrap up this Revelation series. But when we think about the conflict, when we think about God and how powerful He is fighting against this dragon who we know will lose, what side do you want to be on, and how involved with it are you going to be? So we are going to wrap up there. Again, reminder, grab these cards. I think Vanessa has them. Vanessa has them. Some of you did this on Tuesday. Scan these, because there's a chance to earn prizes. So on Tuesday, for those of you who did the Tuesday one, we'll give out prizes to you on Tuesday. Next week, if you do these and do what's required of you to earn a prize, we'll hand out prizes to you next week. You just gotta scan it. It has all these questions, has these notes so that you can read and jump in. I encourage you to scan it so that you can be involved and discuss and reflect on this as well. Also, as you leave, Connor has candy for the prize. Don't crowd around Connor, just one at a time. Grab some candy on your way out. Brady and Lily, come see me for your prize. And you'll get different candy. Asher, anything else? No. Let us pray, and we will see you on Tuesday. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we pray, saying thank you for this morning. We pray, saying thank you that, one, you reveal the conflict to us, that we recognize that there's something happening around us, God, and that you are calling us to be on your side in the midst of that conflict. Help us to see how real and deep and powerful your side is in this battle. Help us to see what side that you are calling us to be on. And may our love for you, our commitment to you, and our relationship with you continue to define the ways that we fight alongside you. God, be with us throughout this week. May we continue to worship you and continue to fall in our love with you. In Christ's name, amen. All right, guys, thank you. Grab the cards from Vanessa, grab candy from Connor. Actually, Lily and Brady, Brian has the candy for you next to him, so go to Brian right there. And we will see you on Tuesday, everybody.
participate in